There's a silent moment in every connection where a woman decides whether she'll lean into you or pull away. You won't see it happening. You won't hear it happening, but you'll feel it. The way her enthusiasm softens, the way her attention shifts, the way she becomes harder to read. Most men react by trying harder, explaining more, giving more. And that's exactly the moment the dynamic collapses. Because what she'll never admit is this: she's not evaluating your effort. She's evaluating your center. She wants to know if you can hold your ground when the emotional weather changes. Most men can't. They panic. They fold. They lose themselves. But you don't have to. If you stay with me, I'll show you the psychology behind that pivotal moment and how to shift it in your favor every time. There's a truth most women will never say out loud, not because it's cruel, but because it exposes the part of attraction they don't want anyone to see. The pull toward uncertainty, the magnetic tension of a man they cannot fully read or control. Women aren't drawn to predictable comfort the way men imagine. They're drawn to the man who feels just out of reach, the one whose presence makes their mind race a little faster, their emotions sharpen, their curiosity stay awake. She won't admit this because it clashes with the good girl image she's been taught to maintain. She's supposed to want stability, clarity, emotional openness. But in the private space of her instincts, desire doesn't follow that script. Attraction lives in tension, not certainty. And she feels that tension most when she can't easily categorize you. This is why silent tests happen long before you realize you're being evaluated. The sudden shift in her tone, the unanswered message, the colder energy, the subtle distance that makes you wonder if something changed. She's not always doing it consciously. Sometimes it's instinct, sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's simply her way of checking whether you remain grounded when she pulls back. And yes, most women are drawn to men who appear emotionally unavailable, not because they want pain, but because that unavailability signals something rare: autonomy. A man who moves with his own rhythm, who doesn't cling, who doesn't break under pressure. To her nervous system, that feels like strength. Distance creates a dopamine spike. The moment she feels she doesn't fully have you, her mind invests more. She imagines, she analyzes, she anticipates. That anticipation is where attraction expands. Not in certainty, but in the gap between what she knows and what she wants to understand. Here's the truth she'll never confess. She isn't drawn to the man she fully understands. She's drawn to the man she cannot predict. Men often assume they lose because they're too nice, but that's never been the real issue. You don't lose because you're kind. You lose because she can sense when your kindness is just a mask for fear. Fear of conflict, fear of displeasing her, fear of breaking the image you hope she'll approve of. And once she senses that fear, everything shifts. Women don't disconnect from nice guys because they prefer toxicity. They disconnect because predictable softness signals something they can't feel attraction for: a man who has already surrendered his power. When you make yourself completely accessible, completely agreeable, completely safe from edge or tension, she doesn't feel protected. She feels responsible for leading the dynamic. And that responsibility quietly exhausts her. Attraction isn't built on comfort alone. It's built on respect first. Without respect, comfort becomes neutrality, and neutrality becomes indifference. A woman can admire kindness, but she only feels desire towards strength, the kind of strength that creates emotional gravity. Not dominance, not control, just the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't shrink himself to be chosen. Imagine this: she tells you something you disagree with. Instead of calmly stating your stance, you smile, nod, and avoid friction. She notices. She won't call it out, but she'll register the moment you chose harmony over honesty. And another layer of attraction slips away. Because what she wants isn't a man who bends. She wants a man who stands. Women aren't repelled by kindness. They're repelled by the absence of backbone behind it. They want to feel that who you are doesn't depend on how much you think they'll like you. They want to feel your self-respect before they can feel any desire. Nice guys don't finish last because they're good people. They finish last because they give up their power before the relationship even begins. Every man who's ever cared too much, too fast, knows the shock of it. One moment she's warm, responsive, leaning into the connection, and the next, she's pulling away like she never felt anything at all. The sudden cold shoulder, the half-hearted replies, the "I'm fine," followed by silence, the unread messages that make your chest tighten. It feels personal, but most of the time, it isn't meant to hurt you. It's a psychological rhythm far older than modern dating. Here's what actually happens. When a woman senses the emotional momentum shifting too quickly toward your side, she instinctively pulls back. Not always because she's losing interest, but because she's losing control of the pace. That moment of distance creates what psychology calls a withdrawal spike. Your nervous system reacts as if something valuable is slipping away, and immediately the chase instinct activates. You feel compelled to fix it, explain yourself, ask what's wrong, pull her close again. But this is where most men fail. They panic, and when she sees that panic, she learns exactly where she has influence over you. The disappearing act isn't always calculated. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's insecurity, sometimes she's simply testing whether your emotional stability is built on her behavior or your own foundation. If her silence can unbalance you, she feels the dynamic tip in her direction. If you spiral, she registers that her withdrawal gives her power. And yet, power isn't what she truly wants. What she's actually searching for is reassurance, not through words, but through witnessing your steadiness when the energy shifts. Here's the truth most men never understand. If her silence makes you panic, she already knows where she controls you. But if her silence meets your calm, collected presence, she feels something she didn't expect. Respect. The pullback isn't a summons for you to chase. It's an invitation for you to remain grounded. A woman feels safest with a man whose emotions do not collapse at the first sign of uncertainty. When she pulls away, the strongest move you can make is to stay centered, not shaken. One of the most confusing shifts a man experiences is when a woman who once seemed balanced and affectionate suddenly slips into the role of the wounded party. She becomes quieter, softer, almost fragile in the way she frames every disagreement as something you caused, even when the situation is far more complex. It feels unfair, manipulative, even calculated. But beneath the surface, something deeper is happening. Many women step into the victim role not out of cruelty, but out of emotional survival. When she feels unheard, unsteady, or uncertain about where she stands with you, this role becomes the quickest way to regain a sense of control. It gives her the upper hand without confrontation. It shifts the emotional responsibility onto you. And in moments of insecurity, that shift feels protective to her. That's why triangulation happens. She mentions another man who understands her. She brings up what her friend said about your behavior. She subtly invites a third presence into the dynamic, not to destroy the relationship, but to reinforce her emotional footing. If she feels outnumbered by her own fears, she'll create a scenario where you are the one outnumbered instead. And guilt becomes the final weapon, not because she wants to break you down, but because she doesn't know how else to restore equilibrium. When she says, "I guess I'm just too much," or "Maybe you don't care like I thought," she isn't always trying to manipulate you. Often, she's trying to soothe her own anxiety by shifting the discomfort onto your shoulders. Here's the insight most men miss. She's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to regain power the only way she knows how. But if you don't understand what's happening, you get pulled into the spiral, apologizing for things you didn't do, over-explaining, over-fixing, over-giving. And the more you try to rescue her from feelings she hasn't even sorted herself, the faster the dynamic becomes unbalanced. Your job isn't to carry her emotions. Your job is to recognize the pattern, stay grounded, and refuse to enter a battlefield built on guilt instead of truth. Every man has heard a version of it. I don't kiss on the first date. I don't move too fast. I'm not that kind of woman. And yet, somewhere in her history, there was a man she broke every one of those rules for without hesitation. That contradiction drives men insane, but it only feels contradictory if you misunderstand what those rules are built for in the first place. Women don't create dating rules as universal moral codes. They create them as emotional safety nets. Each rule is a boundary she installs when she's unsure of the man in front of her. His intentions, his emotional depth, his consistency, his ability to handle her vulnerability. Rules are not an instruction manual for love. They're a risk management system. And when desire is low or uncertainty is high, the system becomes strict. But when desire is strong, the system collapses instantly. That's why she'll take things slow with the man she's unsure about and move at lightning speed with the one who triggers her instincts. Not because she's fickle, but because attraction rewrites the rules she thought she'd follow. Here's the truth many men overlook. Her rules are not boundaries, they're filters. They tell you where you stand in her internal hierarchy. If she keeps things procedural, who texts first, how long she waits before replying, how slowly she escalates, she's protecting herself because she doesn't fully trust her feelings for you yet. But when she bends, breaks, or completely forgets those rules, it's because something in you bypasses her fear and goes straight to her instinct. This isn't about demonizing her choices. It's about understanding the silent logic shaping them. Women are not inconsistent. They're responsive. Their behavior adapts to how deeply they feel the man in front of them. When a woman breaks her own rule with you, she's telling you something real. You're not the risk. You're the exception. And when she reinforces every rule with precision, she's telling you something too, just not with words. Love rarely arrives all at once, but illusion does. And that's why the early stages of certain connections feel intoxicating, because what she's giving you isn't just affection, it's a reflection of you. A carefully tuned mirror that makes you feel seen, understood, chosen in a way you haven't felt in years. She matches your tone, your humor, your pace. She mirrors your beliefs, your values, even your vulnerabilities. Not because she's playing a calculated game, but because mirroring is how many women create emotional closeness quickly. It makes her feel aligned with you. It makes you feel like destiny. Then comes the love bombing. Day 1. She tells you how easy you are to talk to. Day 2. She swears she's never felt such chemistry. Day 3. She says something about fate or timing or how rare this connection feels. Day 4. She's already imagining a future with you. By day 5, you're wondering if you finally found the one person who understands every corner of you without effort. This escalation isn't always manipulation, though it can be if she lacks emotional stability. More often, it's her way of securing certainty before she allows herself to fall. She amplifies affection to anchor the bond. But the danger isn't in her intention. It's in the speed. Because the faster a connection rises, the harder it crashes when reality interrupts the fantasy. Here's the insight you need to hold on to. A woman mirrors the man she wants to keep, not the man she respects. If she senses that you're grounding, intentional, and not swept away by the emotional high, mirroring becomes a bridge to genuine intimacy. But if she sees you abandon your center, dropping your boundaries, rearranging your life, absorbing her intensity without discernment, the illusion becomes unstable. And once the illusion cracks, so does the attraction. Love bombing feels like a gift, but it's a test disguised as a dream. You're not supposed to reject it, but you're not supposed to drown in it either. Your role is to stay present, steady, and aware of the difference between connection and projection. A man doesn't lose a woman the moment she walks away. He loses her the moment he abandons himself for her. And this happens far earlier and far more quietly than most men realize. It starts with small sacrifices. You cancel plans to be available. You adjust your opinions to avoid tension. You give more affection, more reassurance, more effort, trying to hold on to the version of her you saw in the beginning. None of these actions are wrong on their own, but together they form a pattern she feels long before you do, the steady erosion of your identity. When a man gives too much without being asked, a woman doesn't feel adored, she feels burdened. She senses the weight of expectation behind the gesture. He wants to impress, he wants to be chosen, he wants to be enough. And that desire, when it turns into overgiving, quietly smothers attraction. This is where pedestalizing becomes dangerous. The moment she becomes the center of your world, she loses the ability to feel you as a man with gravity, direction, and self-respect. Instead, she feels the pressure of being your source of meaning. And no woman wants that responsibility, not long-term. From the female perspective, the shift is almost instinctive. When you orbit her, she steps back. When you overinvest, she withholds. Not out of cruelty, but because imbalance kills desire. She cannot be drawn to a man who treats her like a prize he must constantly win. She's drawn to the man who treats himself as someone worth choosing. Here's the hard truth. When you make her your world, she can't feel you as a man anymore. Validation addiction, seeking her approval, her attention, her reassurance, turns you into a responder, not a leader in your own life. And once you lose that inner leadership, the dynamic collapses. But you can reclaim it. Not by pulling away in anger or playing games, but by returning to yourself, your purpose, your standards, your boundaries. Because your value has never lived in how much you give. It lives in how you lead your own life, not in how tightly you cling to hers. There comes a point in every man's journey where he realizes the real battle was never about understanding her. It was about mastering himself. Because the moment you stop reacting out of fear, urgency, or emotional dependence, the entire dynamic shifts. You stop playing defense. You stop chasing clarity. You stop negotiating for scraps of reassurance. And you start moving from a place of power. Not dominance, not control, but inner direction. When a woman pulls back, most men rush forward. When she grows cold, they heat up. When she becomes inconsistent, they overcompensate. But attraction doesn't live in effort. It lives in equilibrium. And equilibrium begins with your ability to hold your ground. So here's what reclaiming your power actually looks like. First, you mirror her distance, not to punish her, but to restore balance. When she becomes quieter, you don't chase. You match her pace with calm, deliberate space. This signals something she rarely experiences, a man who isn't emotionally hijacked by her fluctuations. Second, you build boundaries that are communicated through action, not words. Boundaries aren't speeches, they're standards. They're the moments when you step back from unclear energy, when you stop entertaining mixed signals, when you refuse to negotiate with inconsistency. A woman feels boundaries far more than she hears them. Third, you reduce emotional investment in ambiguity. When you invest heavily in someone who gives you uncertainty, you're teaching your nervous system to crave the very thing that destabilizes you. Pull your energy back from what isn't stable and reinvest it into what strengthens you, your goals, your discipline, your inner clarity. Purpose is the anchor. No emotional storm can move. Fourth, reclaim your autonomy, emotionally and mentally. She should complement your life, not consume it. When you lead yourself, you stop needing her reactions to feel secure. And paradoxically, that's when she feels safest with you. Women are drawn to men who are steady, Not because they're detached, but because they can feel deeply without losing themselves. This is how you shift the dynamic without aggression, manipulation, or games. You're not withdrawing to provoke her. You're centering yourself to protect your emotional architecture. And once you do, everything changes. Her tone, her effort, her investment, her respect. Because here's the truth. No one teaches men. You don't win by controlling her. You win by controlling yourself. At the end of all this, there's one truth you need to walk away with. The women in your life may never openly admit the dynamics you just learned, but those dynamics shape every connection you've ever had. Attraction, power, uncertainty, desire, none of it is random. None of it is personal. It's psychological. It's instinctual. And it's happening whether you recognize it or not. Understanding these patterns doesn't make you cynical. It makes you conscious. It allows you to step out of the emotional fog and into a place where you finally see the architecture behind her behavior. And your own. Because when you can recognize why she pulls back, why she tests, why she mirrors, why she breaks rules or builds them, you stop reacting blindly. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop measuring yourself against her shifts in tone or attention. You become the man who moves with clarity instead of confusion, direction instead of desperation, presence instead of panic. And that's the version of you she responds to with the deepest respect. Remember this. Lasting attraction is born from calm confidence, your ability to stay grounded even when emotions rise, to set boundaries without hostility, to hold your identity without shrinking, and to choose yourself without apology. When you master that, you don't have to chase power in a relationship. You become the power in the relationship. If this message hit you harder than you expected, it means you were ready to hear it. And if you're ready to become the man who doesn't lose himself in love, then stay with this channel. This is where men wake up, rise up, and reclaim the part of themselves they've been giving away for far too long. So if you found value here, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this video. Drop a comment below and tell me which part spoke to you the most. Your transformation starts with awareness, and it continues with choice.